Let's talk today about a car that seems to have been designed with one hand in the grease and the other in a bucket of compromise. Imagine, if you will, a poor fellow sitting between two stools, unable to choose whether he wants to drink a pint or down a tight espresso. Well, in the automotive world, this sad character has a name: the Alfa Romeo 155. A car that, barely off the assembly line, was eclipsed like an old bulb by a state-of-the-art LED projector. I'm talking about the 156, a rolling diva that relegated its big sister to the status of an ugly duckling that no one wants to remember. Today, nearly 30 years after taking its final bow, the 155 drags its tires in the shadow of a history where it never had the leading role. But let's be fair, it wasn't the worst disaster on wheels either. So, does this 155 deserve to end up in oblivion? Certainly not, and that's why we're going to talk about it today. Let's start with the facts, and believe me, they are quite brutal. First, this car had the misfortune of succeeding the 75, the last Alfa propulsion sedan. At least, that's what we thought at the time, and that the purists know what I'm talking about, because the 155 is based on the platform of a Fiat Tipo, a car as exciting as a tax form. Then its look, let's be frank, the 155 has a face that seems to have been hacked by an apprentice lumberjack. A hangover day, not exactly a beauty, even for the 90s. But we will come back to this, as it is what makes it so charming today. And to top it all off, back then, she was upstaged by the 156. A work of art on wheels that made everyone believe that Alfa Romeo was finally going to bounce back. It was effective for a brief period. As a result, the 155 became the pariah of the family, a sort of embarrassing cousin that we avoid inviting to gatherings. Yet it has its fans. You know, the kind of person who drives a Peugeot 309 or a Chrysler Le Baron, claiming it's the pinnacle of mechanical genius. But at its core, the 155 poses a question that has haunted all Alfas since the brand was bought by Fiat in 1986. Is it still a real Alfa, or just a disguised Fiat with a slightly sexier badge? Ironically, the Alfa Romeo 75, its predecessor, which was a rear-wheel drive, was not a beloved queen in its time either. Appeared in 1985 to celebrate the 75 years of Alfa, hence its name. It was a patchwork cobbled together from the remains of the Alfita, released in 1972. Yet, the 75 was excellent. Try it once and you'll see. But at the time, no sane person wanted one. But as the end approached, the journalists suddenly shed crocodile tears. Buy it quickly, the next one will be a front-wheel drive, the ultimate horror. Today, the 75 has far more groupies than the fans of the 155. It must be said that between an old lady a bit unsteady but sincere and a standardized girl born of a forced marriage, with Fiat the choice is quickly made for the nostalgics. In 1988, Fiat therefore hatched the Tipo, a brand new compact. Not ugly, with a novel platform that they wrung out like a mop to make Fiat, Lancia, and of course, our famous 155. A scale economy that delights accountants, but not really the kind of pedigree that makes Alfisti dream. Unveiled in 1992 at the Geneva Motor Show, the 155 was drawn by Ercole Spada, a maestro employed by IDEEA, a Turin-style office that had already given birth to the Lancia Dedra and the Fiat Tipo and Tempra. These guys were the rock stars of mainstream design, provocateurs who liked to throw out square lines and aggressive angles. The Tempra, for example, had shocked with its high-perched trunk, and the 155 took up the concept by pushing it to its geometric limits. Gone are the sensual curves of the old Alfa. Spada opted for total brake, a daring gamble that didn't really appeal to Alfa Romeo fans, already groggy from the transition to the attraction. Sacrilege started by the 164. And BMW customers, they continued to snub this poorly dressed Italian in favor of their 3 Series. Propulsion machines that breathed the joy of driving where the 155 smelled of cheap plastic and a cabin as sad as a rainy day. As a result, its career was as short as a ristretto coffee, barely 6 years. 200,000 units produced, twice less than the, and nothing compared to the 670,000 of the 156. Under the hood, however, there were some big names: the legendary Alfa Romeo, whose design dates back to the 50s, and the 5.6 Busso, an engine that purrs like an Italian tenor, with 166 horsepower in its 2.6 quarts version, so as not to upset the Q4 too much. The latter, for its part, borrowed the Lampredi four-cylinder from the Delta Integral, with all-wheel drive to boot, but again, it was castrated to 190 horsepower. Not enough to make an Audi Quattro tremble, but enough to make this Q4 version desirable, at least for those who like rarities. In 1995, a restyling attempted to give the ensemble a bit more bite, with widened fenders and a 2-liter twin-spark boosted to 150 horsepower. The 155 even shone in competition, a fact that still makes more than one person salivate today. So yes, the 155 never regained the magic of the great Alphas, that mix of charisma and madness that made hearts vibrate. But it has character, a little raw side that appeals to lovers of rarity and its current price. It's a deal for anyone who wants a unique driving experience on a budget. It's not a legend, but it's not a rag either. So the next time you come across a 155, don't snub it too quickly. It might have more to say than it appears. So tell me in the comments if you have any memories in 155. Of course, subscribe. And I leave you with a small anthology of the best moments of the 155 in competition. Cause let's face it, what crazy charisma.